Good morning, everyone. How are you today? My name is Deidre Duffy. I am the Director of Impact Grants and Donor Care at Community Foundation Ireland. And thanks a million to everyone for joining us today on this beautiful, bright, sunny morning. It's great to be here with you all. I'm delighted to be joined today by two colleagues, John Sansome from our development team, and also our CEO, Denise Charlton. And Denise will introduce our brilliant panel of speakers in a short while. And we should have some really rich and vibrant discussions this morning. But first of all, I just want to share with those of you who don't have much connection with the Community Foundation Ireland, or maybe some of you have worked with us before, an overview of our work. Like some of you on this call, I am a lawyer by trade, and I joined the foundation at the beginning of this year. And the reason why I did is because I've always been motivated and inspired around enduring change and long-term systemic change for communities and organizations and people across this country. So first of all, I just want to share with you a few numbers of the foundation. Our mission at the Community Foundation Ireland is equality for all in thriving communities. And we are a philanthropic hub that drives forward and works to create a positive difference for our neighbourhoods, for our communities, nationally, and also globally. And we've been around since 2000. We've managed investments of over 120 million in pursuit of that mission. And at the moment, we currently manage over 100 active donor advised funds and a suite of Community Foundation managed funds, including our own invested funds of over 50 million. Last year in 22, we paid out over 27 million in grants. That's a huge grant making program of which I am very proud to lead up the team. And we had assets under management of over 70 million. Key to our success, and I'll tell you a little bit more about it, is our community of organizations and grantees. Over 5,000 across the country work with us in collaboration to achieve our mission. And globally, community foundations, there's about 1,800 of us. It was started in California, and collectively we're managing over 50 billion in assets. So I think everyone on this call knows that charity and giving, fundraising, community, they're really valued in Ireland. We particularly saw it during the COVID times, and we really stepped up to the mark. It's part of our DNA, from tiny towns to national charities to the GA. But what we're doing in Community Foundation Ireland is we're trying to make that giving into something really extraordinary and powerful. something that creates strategic and lasting change and impact across communities. And philanthropy is different to other fundraising or funding. It can do what others can't. It can take more risks. It can be innovative. It can support groundbreaking campaigns and research where there mightn't be the opportunity for investment through other sources. And for example, some of the incredible projects that we've worked on over the years with our community of donors and grantees, combating sexual violence, delivering the rights of migrants, the traveller community, and the LGBTQ+ community, or the real issues of our time, combating poverty and achieving real change on climate change and biodiversity loss. So philanthropy can actually be in spaces where others find it difficult to operate. So the challenges that I've just laid out there that we're all too aware of, I suppose, in our daily lives, we need to overcome these challenges in order to achieve our equality mission. And how do we do this in a way that's different? Well, at Community Foundation Ireland, we're solution driven. We're innovative, we're strategic, and we're sustainable. So we don't have an eye on the plaster fix. We're looking to the long term. What's really going to make a difference? But I think the key to our success is that we are informed consistently by the people that we live beside, our communities and our pool of grantees. We operate in a partnership and collaborative approach. We're driven by the need on the ground. And because of that, we can then identify patterns, connections, and solutions that others can't yet see because we have this community of grantees and organizations across the country. Our approach at all times is rooted in partnership and collaboration. We have a very proud history in the Foundation of working with professional advisors, and our community of professional advisors have played a pivotal role in our history, and you'll hear some more now from our brilliant panel in a couple of minutes. That community of professional advisors has not only delivered incredible impact for people across this country, but also for their clients personally. And one of the reasons for this success around strategic and purposeful giving is our approach using the head and the heart. So the heart tells us where the need is, the passion, the motivation for change. But we work with the head as we identify it to identify a strategic plan and to work around governance, due diligence, monitoring, and also monitoring reporting and risk. So the head and the heart working together in synergy, along with the strategic advice that we can give our donors. Every donor that comes to us, and I mentioned already we have over 100 funds at the moment, will have a different social issue that they have a particular interest in. Some might be very motivated by a place. Others might have benefited personally from education and they want to give that back. But what unites all our donors is their desire to make that difference. We work with individuals and families, and we ensure that the donor funds are used in line with their wishes and their desires. And we also offer the services that donors need when they need them. As you probably know better than I, today companies and institutions have really strong ESG agendas. And what we can do at Community Foundation Ireland is help to structure strategies to deliver on those commitments. So no matter what size, company or enterprise, we can make corporate philanthropy less daunting, identifying a robust approach to fulfill the wider ambitions of our communities, but also the ESG agenda of our corporate partners. And we're really proud of a number of very high profile and important corporate institutions that work with us, like AXA, Energia, Bank of Ireland with their really good Begin Together fund, and of course the RTE Toy Show appeal. And I don't know if any of you saw the last show of Round Turbidity last week, but you'd have seen some of our grantees were on the show. And I think it goes without saying that this has touched the heart of the nation. And what we've managed to do with RTE is to bring together our pool of grantees, our community connections, the leading children's advocates in this country, and work with RTE to develop a grant-making programme that delivered on their ambition and their desire for change across every county in the island, fulfilling essential needs and other needs for children who most need them, in households, for example, where there's a choice between heating or eating, where children don't have access to creativity and play. So I think the impact of that show and our appeal and our grant making approach is very evident there. There is a growing interest in philanthropy in Ireland, but it's fair to say that we still lag behind other countries. Some people don't really know what the difference is between fundraising and philanthropy. Again, philanthropy is that long-term strategic, sustainable approach that you'll hear some more about. The good news is that the government has published recently a draft policy on philanthropy. It's out for consultation at the moment. And we're working with government, again, more of our strategic partnerships, hoping that this new policy can change things and really accelerate the landscape for philanthropy in Ireland. Finally, I just want to mention, I suppose, that philanthropy is bread and butter to us. We're a philanthropic hub. We live and breathe it. We want to achieve that change. But I think when I'm talking to friends and family in the community I live in, you know, sometimes people don't know that they can be philanthropists. They almost are waiting for permission to do it, or they don't understand how to get there. But there is a framework there for people to participate and to make that difference. And I think a lot of people have that desire to achieve social change, both within their communities and on a more national level. And what people can receive from us in the foundation is strategic advice, evidence-based strategies, and also that assurance around good governance, around transparency in terms of the investment that they would be making. So finally, I just want to thank you for your time this morning. I'm going to hand you over now to my colleague and our brilliant CEO, Denise Charlton, and she will introduce our panel. And I hope you very much enjoy the next hour. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Deidre, and welcome everybody to this webinar this morning, and thanks so much for giving your time. As Deidre said, we have a brilliant panel, and I'm going to introduce them now. But not only are they a brilliant panel, giving their time today, but they are such friends and allies and partners with Community Foundation Ireland. As Deidre mentioned, 20% of our giving and the work that she so articulately outlined is because of professional advisors. And the three in the room today are incredible with the referrals that they give to Community Foundation Ireland. So I want to start with a big thank you. They'll be known to many of you, but I'll just do a quick background on them all. Mike Gaffney is the former chair of Community Foundation Ireland. He's a chartered accountant. He works with KPMG. He specialises in dealing with privately owned companies and in particular with property transaction. He's written and lectured extensively on subjects over many years. He's a fellow of the Irish Tax Institute, and he also is the chair of our Social Impact Investment Group and of our Investment Committee. We're very lucky to have had Mike's leadership and continue to have his leadership at Community Foundation Ireland. So you're very welcome, Mike. We have Nora Lillis, and Nora is a partner and head of private client team with Gartlan Furey, LLP. Her practice focuses on providing advice in the area of trust and estates, including the law of charity. Nora is an associate of the Irish Tax Institute, also a former chairperson of the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners. She also writes regularly and provides seminars on trust and estate issues, and co-author of the sections on settlements and trusts in the Irish Conveyancing Precedents. Nora, also a friend of Community Foundation for many, many years. Enrique Curran is the founder of Camino Capital, a multifamily office based in Dublin. Prior to setting up Camino 2016, his early career was in investment management, and he was formerly head of equities with Marion Capital. He acts as a trusted advisor to families and entrepreneurs post-exit and to CEOs managing their wealth. And again, Enrique, a really important partner and friend to Community Foundation Ireland. So Mike, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay. You've seen, under your leadership, you've seen the growth of Community Foundation in the last while and the interest, I suppose, of donors coming to the table. How do you view the landscape at the moment in terms of philanthropy?
Yeah, I do remember, Denise, over the years, you were saying this, and even going back a long time, we always said that we were just on the foothills and Ireland, is way behind comparable other countries in philanthropy. I think that's changing big time. The last few years, as you've mentioned, our experience has been that the interest and indeed the figures that come from that, by any way you want to measure it, have been exponentially increasing. Dramatically. I mean, you could see it in our figures, or any way you want to look at the thing. So I think it's great. It's to some extent we've all had to scramble to react to it because it needs to be supported. But I think the good news is that the trend is going in the right direction exponentially. Not sure why that is. Maybe the pandemic had some sort of an effect. I do know it did cause people to think about, their lives and wills and things like that. So maybe it's had some sort of effect. I think it was happening anyway, and I think it's probably a natural consequence of two things. One is Ireland becoming wealthier, that there's more people have sold businesses and have money. And secondly, I think the philosophy of philanthropy is beginning to get better known and better accepted from international sources, and I think from people just developing their thoughts as time goes by.
That's great, Mike. Enrique, that leads me to a question for you. You talk about working with your clients about the purpose of their wealth, bearing in mind that landscape that we're looking at, that that there's plenty of growth in it. Talk to us a little bit about that engagement, will you, and what you talk to your clients about?
Yeah, I mean, I think thanks for having me, Denise. Yeah, I think really that the easiest way to think about it is that when clients get a liquidity event or they come across a lot of money, at first there's a level of excitement, then there's a level of being scared about what to do with it. And then after a while, it takes a little bit of time, but after a while it really starts to think a little bit more laterally around what the purpose of their wealth is. And it isn't maybe buying I don't think the Irish psyche is about buying flash cars and flash houses and things like that. There's an element of really trying to get some sense of purpose for their wealth. And we work a lot with kind of saying, well, what's it for? What's it really for? Given you're not going to spend it. And I think that as the dialogue moves on, people think that really philanthropy is one of the things that they can be certain will add value to their lives and obviously to other people's lives. So it takes a while for them to get there, but it's a really important part of our job, because I think it's incumbent upon advisors to make people aware of, being a citizen of the earth. You should be trying to help other people as well as just making people richer. So so it's really just about defining the purpose of wealth and what success will look for them going forward. Something that sometimes they lose when they sell their business. They lose that thought of what's really driving them.
And it's interesting for us as well, because you bring clients on a journey, and we do too, that often the entry point into philanthropy, then that journey brings them further and further in, and get great satisfaction from giving once they feel confident and assured. Nora, I'm going to go to you then, and just to talk about that, like what's important to your clients when you are discussing and referring them to us or philanthropy. And we talk about anonymity being very important, and I know you have some thoughts on that.
Well, I think first, in terms of when you're talking about philanthropy, is that like anything with the families that we all work with, where it's yourselves or Mike and Enrique, is they're looking for quality advice and experience. So, whether it's the tax advice, the legal advice, financial advice, they want good advice. And I think, previously that probably wasn't an issue with philanthropy or charitable giving quite so much. It was always there, but I think now people want to work with experts. And they also want to ensure that they're getting, a good value for whatever they're doing and a return on their investment. And I think philanthropy is the same as any other investment in that way. Well, it's not, except that it's not for themselves, but it's return for the money that's going in. So if you're doing this in a more strategic way, then you can see the return. And then the second piece that you brought up, the privacy element, and I think this can be very different. Some clients want to be out there and everybody to know what they're doing, and they really enjoy that, and it's part of the experience. Whereas for others, and I think quite a high number of other families I work with, they want the ability to get a proper return, see that their money is being used well, but at the same time, not necessarily have their names plastered all over everything. So they can engage in a way that they're part of it, but at the same time have privacy around it. So it is an important issue, and coming up with ways to do that is important, whether it's lifetime giving or something we talked about previously is that, you know, when you give under your will, an issue that I've seen over the last little while is that, you know, the will is a document of public record. So a lot of families are very aware of that. And years ago, charitable giving was essentially a bit of ad hoc giving, and, you know, the few charitable legacies clause that you saw in wills. But I think, you know, we're going to move away from that with a lot of the families that we work with, who are thinking about how to achieve that without necessarily everybody knowing about it.
Thanks, Nora. And again, we would see that, I suppose, where linked to the two comments that you made, that people are very interested in seeing the impact of their giving. And if they're giving while living, they get to really enjoy it and get to see. But it does lead us on to legacies. And obviously, Community Foundation, we have our endowed fund, and that's unique, I think, here in Ireland, and unique to the Community Foundation model. And we know that there's going to be huge transfer of wealth. So how do we encourage, I suppose, support for longer term giving, for legacies? How as a foundation do you think we should be thinking about that? I'll ask that to all the panel. Mike, you might go first.
Sure, Denise. Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? We've struggled with this for quite a bit, and but I think the starting point, by the way, is that in Ireland, because we haven't had generations of historic wealth, we haven't actually had that many legacies compared to other countries. So therefore, the whole world of legacies in this thing has not developed. It probably lags behind the donations, because it's going to be hopefully decades before people die when they've got money in. So I think we're starting from a very immature sort of overall scenario. What do we do to speed it up, especially given that baby boomers presumably will be dying and passing on their money? I suppose obviously the normal things like indeed this webcast and just spreading the word around generally is important. I do think from the point of view of the Community Foundation for Ireland, I think we need to stress the fact that we collectively or corporately or however you want to do it will be here in 100 years' time. So if somebody's looking for a good home for their legacy, both in money terms and in whatever they want to achieve or be remembered for terms, an organization that is structured to last for decades or hundreds of years is likely to be a good home for it. I think to remind people to think about charity when they're doing their wills, I think some gimmick or something might be helpful, that like, for instance, that you might get some tax break. Now, I'm a bit suspicious of tax breaks, and to some extent they can give philanthropy a bad name, because people sometimes think, oh, they're doing it for tax reasons or whatever, even though that's not logical. But if there was something small that just caused people to have to think about charity, when they were planning for their legacies, like, some box that if you do this, some small tax break happens or some money goes someplace. I don't think it has to be material, but if it just was enough to cause them to actually think about giving money to charity, then once the idea takes hold, I think that could cause an awful lot more legacies to be directed towards charities. It's just getting the thought into people's minds, I think, is the key point.
Thanks, Mike. Enrique, any thoughts? And thoughts really, I suppose, on encouraging philanthropy generally, as well as legacies?
Yeah, there's 2 points. One, I think this call is hugely helpful. The more advisors just put it in, it's one of those things that the more people are aware of it and think about it, somebody tomorrow could be speaking to somebody, it might be fresh in their mind. So the more that advisors themselves have it in their head about philanthropy and just raising the subject of charitable giving, the more likely it is that somebody, it could be today, it could be tomorrow. So just the frequency of interaction, I think, is important, and that advisors have it in their mind. The other thing I always thought, I've always had the feeling, for example, we will look at, the tax implications before the year is out of giving away money. So clients, for example, will have holding companies, there may be surchargeable income. We would find that our clients would prefer to give away 100% of the money than pay tax at 50% on money that they don't need. So they would say, well, I would rather put that with the community foundation, almost have it on ice for when they get their head around what they want to achieve with it. But I might as well give away 100% of the pie than have the tax man take 50. It's an extraordinary motivation. So when we get towards tax return season, when everybody is busy, I think it would be really helpful if if various different people preparing tax returns would at least make them aware that this is an option. Mike, as a leading tax advisor, I'm not sure whether that's something that tax people would be willing to do, but I certainly think if they were made aware of it, whether it's around surcharge or on filing days, is it something that advisors could really do to just help driving it rather than in a legacy today?
Any view on that, Mike?
Oh yeah, and I think what Enrique is saying is great too. He's using, the tax year as an excuse to raise this, and it's also interesting psychologically, as you say, people, if they think they're doing something clever, they'll be doing something good which they want to do as well. So I've seen that in practice, and what Enrique says works extremely well, and I think it's great advice for everybody on this call.
Great, thanks, Mike. Nora, legacies, encouraging
legacies. I think that we all as advisors and you, the Community Foundation, have to have faith that this is coming down the line. I think on the legacies, because people are talking about it and people are doing it, but thankfully not everybody's dying that young either. So there is this issue of people living longer and the wills are in place, but you could be 20, 30 years waiting for that money. So you have to have faith that it is coming down the line. But I would like to see more people, not just, I suppose, giving, in particular, people with a lot of wealth. And Enrique, where I'm coming from on this in terms of they have money, everybody's provided for, and now we're looking at what else is there, that you're really looking at a percentage of somebody's estate going into the Community Foundation or going into a fund, not just a sum of money. But to get people brave enough to do that, one of the first questions they'll say is, will the Community Foundation still be there, if they're big sums of money? And thankfully, I can say, well, I've known you for, over 20 years. So you're still there now and you're growing and you're doing so much more. But I do think that if people are going to do that and have flexibility within that structure to meet the needs at a particular time. So you're making your will now, but you don't die for 20 years. You don't know what the needs are going to be. So you've got this flexible structure, but at the same time, you need to have the lifetime giving to build up an element of trust and understanding of how that will work whenever it is you do die in the future. So I think to make the legacies work, you have to have at least a little bit of lifetime giving. One of the things I was talking to Jackie, who works in the Community Foundation, who people know very well, is that it is a journey, it's a slow process. And if somebody gives a little bit of money to you and sees how it works, then that will lead them into thinking about the legacy piece. But there is that element of trust and understanding. So you need the two sides to work together, I think, in Ireland to get the impact that I think you will see. But many of us may be retired at that point or not here. So it's pushing now for what may happen in 20, 30 years, 50 years, all of that. That's what we're all working for.
Exactly. Thanks, Nora. And I suppose that is what's unique about the model, the Community Foundation, that it is around, as Mike says, forever. It is about setting it up that's giving back to the community. So it's a good catch for us to amplify that when we're communicating about what we offer, and that it is the giving while living, but also that opportunity for longer term and legacy giving. There's a lot of talk, obviously, about where the money goes. And Deidre mentioned we work with 5,000 partners across the country. But just for your clients, their perception of charity and what's important to them, like we talk about the head and the heart. So the head is minding the due diligence, the governance, and then the heart is the impact and the motivation and engaging with their ambition or where they're at. What Mike, you've seen it over the years. What's important around the charity sector, do you think, for us to be thinking about? And then for advisors, ensuring advisors that are new to the Community Foundation?
Yeah, it's a good question, Denise. And I think, in fairness, a lot of the type of people who could give money to the Community Foundation, they're generally sophisticated enough not to be put off by headlines of the odd charity having frauds or whatever it is. I think they generally know that you can have good governance and that 99% of these things are working fine. So that doesn't tend to put them off. Having said that, typically business people or families that have money from business, they are big into governance and they want to make sure everything's done right. Sometimes they haven't a clue what to do. They really need advice on what the possibilities are in terms of where to give the money. And that's where our expertise comes in with knowing the charitable sector and all the possible people you can deal with and what might be done. And then they like to do things right. And that could be, and I think that's where we come in very well as well, that we've you know, from the people on this call and the resources within the Community Foundation, we have great technical ability so that we can promise absolutely top level governance, but at the same time not let the governance kill, you know, the original thought or the original idea, which would be very easy to happen. So for instance, if people have, you know, shares and they want to give the shares to a donor advised fund, and that's something that's allowed without capital gains tax, because imagine if you give away all your money and then you have a tax bill as well, you've ended up with more expense than you had to give away. So we found we have the expertise to be able to make things happen that are technically possible, and to make it to have it done with very good governance and to react reasonably quickly. So I think that's really important to the people that we deal with, that we can come up with specific responses to specific situations which have specific technical issues, and often that's to do with tax and stamp duty and things like that. But then as well, we have the other side, which is the knowledge of the charity sector and where the money might actually go to. And some people already have their idea of what they want to do with the money, but in my experience, most people don't really know. And some very big business people are just too busy and they want to kind of almost delegate as much of that as they possibly can, while at the same time being assured that the money is being used in an optimal manner.
Yeah, and I think that's right, Mike, where we would often see people might have an idea about where they'd like the money to go. So for example, it might be there was addiction in their family and but they don't know who to give it to or what that might look like, or you know, is it research, is it service provision, is it a pilot? So that's where we can really help, even when people have a sense of the issues. And then we also see where people have no idea, and where we bring them on that journey. Enrique as well, any comments from you just in terms about what's important in, you know, governance, due diligence, impact?
I think one thing that's very powerful is that, you know, the clients that I've worked with you guys, really when they get their head around the Community Foundation itself is a charity in its own right, really, that they kind of think, well, if all I did was encourage other people to give charity, that would be a good day's work regardless. I think most people are overawed by, you know, having to first address, as we said, as I said at the outset, what's the purpose of the wealth? Now to kind of go, well, I've decided charity, I don't know where to start. I don't know what the issues that mean something for me. Why should the issues that mean something for me be where I address the money to? Surely there's good in the world, you know, there's lots of people. I think that the other thing to overcome is that nobody's ever seen a video for a charity and not walked away feeling that it was worthwhile. All charities are worthwhile. So it's really trying to make a success of the giving in their own minds and with their family and achieving a purpose. I think that's where the Community Foundation really helps kind of hone family values and help them get some success in what they're doing. Because, you know, the note I took here was really, they don't know what they don't know. Most of the clients we've worked with haven't had lots of money for very long, so they don't have experience of trying to, you know, address mental health or domestic violence, or they don't know where even to begin. They're just afraid of getting it wrong. So I mean, that would be my kind of thoughts. And
just a follow-up question then, Enrique, because when we're dealing with families, there's also lots of different I suppose, ambition within a family, isn't there? Like some will engage, some won't, some have very specific interests, some don't. Talk to us a little bit about that when you do have families who are engaging.
Yeah, I think it's you know, most of it, as I think Nora was saying earlier, most of it's first generation wealth. So what you generally find is that it's new and it's a journey for all of them. In my experience, most of the clients that we deal with are mean to themselves, right? So they don't. It isn't Brewster's Millions and they're off buying yachts and things. So therefore, it becomes a dialogue at home they start firstly by being nervous about letting their children be aware of the scale of their wealth. And I think that once that happens, then they're keen to embrace philanthropy, that this money it's a journey around this money that, you know, the parents may have generated is actually going to enrich more than just the family's lives. I think Warren Buffett said that he wanted his children to have enough that they could do whatever they wanted, but not enough that they could do nothing. And I think that's where the giving away and looking to the rest of the family and embracing with the children, so that they, like we've worked with the family, with yourselves, that actually documented what are the family values and how does that translate into what we'd like to give through. And I think that that's been a hugely enriching, you know, for that family and for a few others. So it's around documenting and defining purpose. I know I keep saying that, but all manner of life is around just defining the purpose of what wealth is for and defining what you're trying to achieve. And that feeds into children as well as just the people that have earned the money.
And people, don't they get great satisfaction out of the purpose of philanthropy. You know, we see people on the journey and they really, really do get motivated and engaged. And even if the family members, as you say, have completely different ambitions about or interests, we can figure that out with them.
I think projects, it has been my experience, where they see a specific result of what they gave, whether that's a shelter, whether that's a home, whether that's a piece of medical equipment, that really is very direct and in your face. And you could say, well, that could have just sat in the bank doing nothing as well. But now look at what I've achieved. And I think for family members, that's hugely engaging and really, really rewarding. And you know, I would say, and I mean this, that when clients have given money, you know, and decided to become philanthropic, I would find it the most rewarding part of the job that I do. Is you really feel pride that you've contributed positively, not just professionally. It's a positive contribution. So that's why I do it. And I encourage other people to think of it that way too.
Great, thanks, Enrique. Nora, importance to clients, the due diligence, the governance, other factors you've mentioned already some.
Yeah, and I think the due diligence and the governance, people expect that. I think the days of, I suppose when I started out in practice, people would come into you and say, I want to set up a charity, and you kind of could do it back then. Now you can't. And I think actually what's interesting on the journey is people don't come and say that anymore. I was just thinking about that when I was listening. We've moved on nearly from that, which is, you know, 20 years ago, the kind of advice you were giving around philanthropy. Now it is the impact piece and how can it work for my family. And I think adding what Enrique has been talking about there, and where I was saying that people want to return earlier on, return for their investment. They'll get the return from the philanthropy and the feel good, but they'll also get the return in terms of family engagement. So in fact, what people like about the philanthropy piece is that they can be a bit scared about talking amongst the family about management of wealth in other ways. Working in the business is fine. Everybody, you know, if let's say, you know, there's a family business and everyone's working hard, but managing the wealth that comes out of that can be a little bit of a difficult conversation for Irish families. They're not used to that at all, and they don't want to talk about it. But gathering the family together to communicate around a piece of philanthropy is teaching the family how to communicate, how to make decisions, and how to engage in a professional process. So they want it to be professional. They want good advisors involved. A lot of the issues for families or the younger generations in learning about wealth is a learning about taking advice, taking it in and then making decisions. And any piece of philanthropy that has real impact is going to involve that, whether it's the tax advice, understanding that piece around capital gains tax, for example. That can be a real learning piece for the younger generation, and seeing the penny drop and going, wow, this is really great. We're going to save tax, so there's going to be more money coming in. Or if they're receiving income, you know, looking at giving the 100%, as Enrique was saying. So I think that piece about what families want is that there's a little bit of what comes back to, you know, that's what everybody wants now in terms of everything they do is to see value in what they're doing. So it's not just and we all get that, like those Late Late Show pictures, amazing, everything that's gone back into the giving that went into the toy show, and you see that and you go, wow, I was involved, I gave money that night or whatever. But I think when you're looking about the long-term strategy, it's also that what's my family getting back? Not just that buzz, but also the learning. So those two sides, I think that's really important going forward. And I think you probably see that possibly a lot more internationally. So that's new to us. Yeah. But I think in 10 years' time, that'll be just a given here.
Great. I'm afraid we've run out of time. That was just fantastic, all of you. And I could listen to you all morning, but I'm not allowed because I have to hand over to John. He's going to talk a little bit just about the engagement with Community Foundation. So huge thanks to our panel before I do that.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Denise.
Okay, so thanks very much, Denise, and to echo both Deirdre and Denise, a huge thanks to our wonderful panel today, Nora, Mike and Enrique. It was a pleasure to hear about the impact philanthropy can have on communities across Ireland, but indeed for donors and their families as well. And I think that's a great takeaway to take today. I'm John Sansome. I'm Senior Philanthropy Development Advisor here with Community Foundation Ireland. And I'm just going to take a few minutes to highlight a brief overview of our offerings to donors. To say we run two key pillars to our offerings, both discretionary fund management service and an advisory fund management service. Our discretionary fund management service is designed for donors who still, whilst very keen to give back strategically and philanthropically, it doesn't involve much engagement from their part, I guess, particularly with regards to time investment. They might be very busy professionally, young families, whatever it might be. So we've run and manage a suite of our own Community Foundation Ireland managed funds. We have our own Women's Fund, our Biodiversity Fund, our Environment Fund, Infant Health and Wellbeing Fund, and many others. And donors can donate direct to those funds, safe in the knowledge that the gifts will be invested strategically and in impact areas that they care deeply about. And to say an added attraction to that is it is essentially a pool fund, so donors will be leveraging their gifts off other donors, so the impact will be even greater still. To say our advisory fund management service, and this is where the donor advised fund mechanism comes in. This is for donors and families who are keen to really get involved in their giving and to get into the weeds of it, I guess. We work with individuals, families, corporates, as Deirdre and Denise have mentioned, and we work with them to understand their philanthropic ambitions and what they're looking to achieve and impact areas that they're motivated by. And we map out a philanthropic strategy for them, and then ultimately final say on investments does sit with the donor. So it differs somewhat from the discretionary side in that the donors have the final say with regards to investments. There are three types of donor advised funds that we offer our clients, our donors. Two of which are invested. So we have our long-term endowed fund, as Denise spoke about. This works in that donors would donate a sum of capital at the beginning of their philanthropic journey with Community Foundation Ireland. And that sum would stay invested over years and decades, but whilst donors would also draw down an agreed amount annually from that. So they're very safe in the knowledge that their gift is creating impact long into the future, but also they have that immediate piece and here and now grant making. So that's a very attractive model for donors. We have another invested fund, which is more medium term, typically 7 to 10 years, and very much like our endowed fund, they will donate a sum of capital at the beginning. It'll run for 7 to 10 years, let's say, and there'll be an agreed drawdown annually for immediate grant making. And then finally, we have our flow through offering, and typically funds are spent down within a 6 to 12 month period. So that's for families and donors who are very keen to make immediate impact. And typically, actually, donors would set up a dual fund, so they might set up an endowed and a flow-through offering to tackle both sides. Donors are very interested in the long-term and the short-term. So that's it. That's me. And to say, again, a huge thanks to our wonderful panel speakers today, Nora, Enrique and Mike, and indeed Deidre and Denise. It was such a pleasure to hear the insights on philanthropy in Ireland and where we're headed. I think we all agree it's exciting times. To say a huge thanks to our audience as well for joining. It's great to see the interest in philanthropy in Ireland. And to say if anyone else would like to hear any more about our offerings or indeed reach out, a quick call or a coffee, our contact details will be on the closing slide. So please do reach out. We'd be thrilled to hear from you. And otherwise, have a wonderful day. It looks like a lovely day out there. So I wish you the best and thanks a million for logging on today.